Okay, it's all fired up, so...
Awesome. Are you recording this?
Yeah, just to see if it works.
Okay.
Sometimes it doesn't work. All right, I'll also do this here. Okay, I'm also recording the voice. All right, so let's start with this. You want to be called Mayuresh?
Yes.
Or your other name? Gene, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Mayuresh is good.
All right, so you can listen, and then once you finish eating,
Absolutely.
we can. So, what would you like to talk about, or where do you think I might be able to help you?
So basically, I'm trying to go from. So like most of my jobs have been in design,
Analog
hands-on. No, analog, digital design, but as an engineer doing stuff. And I have an MBA about 4 years back. I have tried to get into like roles which are more customer focused, or somewhere it's like marketing, management, like, but on the customer side. But I haven't had any luck. So where do I go from here? I have been networking, I have been in the angel space, I have tried to do like lots of things, and so basically the thing is, I tried to do all this stuff in Boston and it didn't go anywhere. And so this year, actually, this month, I'm starting to look forward to how I can build a network in the Bay Area and see if I can get into a customer focused role.
Okay, so maybe you need to change the sequence of way you're doing it. I think the most important thing, especially when you're trying to shift the direction of your focus, right, from design, analog, digital, to physical design, right, mostly, to a customer-facing role, the first thing that anybody looks for, including you, I mean, presenting yourself, what story can you tell somebody that in about 100 seconds, minute and a half, as soon as you say it, people say, now I know exactly what you can do, right? And if I were to ask you now, tell me about yourself, you'll probably start by saying, I work in the semiconductor industry, doing physical design, analog and digital, and so forth. That's how you're going to start. But that's a wrong signal. So you need a story built around what you want to do, not what you've done, right? So I would start by saying, I'm a customer-focused product engineer, product manager, if you want to say that, or a marketing manager, however you want to say that, who understands how functionality is articulated or captured and translated into physical design or system design or solution design using design-centric approach. That's how I would start my opening line. And then the resume at the top, the summary part, should focus more on how you have worked extensively with customers to understand what the customers are saying, and then translating that into a product roadmap, which requires a different skill. Because in the design-centric, please have your meal. In a design-centric kind of role, the focus is what I call pushing electrons. You know, you're basically good at pushing electrons. And so before you get to that point, you need to know how to capture the customer requirements and figure out how to articulate that in a product roadmap. So I would say that I would shift the narrative, I call it the leadership narrative, from a design-centric narrative to a customer-centric narrative with a statement that I understand when a customer is telling me what they need, how to translate that into a product roadmap, because many times customers don't know how to articulate their needs. They know what they want, but the way they articulate their needs is in their own mindset, right? But I understand enough of what they're saying to make that solution-centric, not product-centric. There's a difference, right? So I think coming back to what you started saying, I would completely change my narrative and tell a story around how good you are at capturing customers' needs, translate that into a product roadmap, and selling it inside the company to go back to the customer to deliver the solution that they were really looking for. That's the story they want to hear. They don't want to hear what a great designer you are or how you eliminate parasitics. And nobody cares about that. I've done this 5 times in my career. I've changed 5 careers. Not just 5 jobs, 5 careers. And the reason I learned the hard way. I was able to do that is before even talking to the target, my target, I knew exactly what the need was. And I said, if this is what you're struggling with, I can help you. And they said, how did you know that? Well, come on in.
Someone here?
Yeah, please, have a seat. Eat your meal.
That's okay. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so I call it the leadership narrative. You have to learn how to shift your narrative from what you've done to what you want to do. And so the language in which you coach that, when they say, tell me about yourself, it has to jump out and they have to go, wow, can you do that for us? And that's how you get, see, the first 100 seconds is what defines you. Now, they will be polite with you and spend a half hour with you and say, thank you for coming. But if you don't capture them in the first 100 seconds, you lost them.
So you would say...
let me complete the story. So before you start networking, develop your narrative in a direction that you want to go. Pilot it, test it out, show it to your friends. You say, does it look credible to you? And then start networking, because here is what happens. In fact, read my latest article. I call it Networking Paradox. It's on LinkedIn. You probably read that.
Yes, I did.
And the networking paradox is your intimate network knows you too much about what you've done in the past, and you cannot sell it to them. They will say, you never talked to the customer before. I never seen you do that. So you need a peripheral network. And then, so once you connect with them, they say, well, send me your resume, or let me look at your LinkedIn profile. And if the LinkedIn profile now focuses more on capturing customers' solution needs, then you can penetrate that. But if you say one thing to them and the resume says something else, they're not going to promote you because they don't have time to understand what you do.
Right.
They will probably spend a minute or two, that's about it. No matter how well you know them. That's why I read that blog I wrote, Networking Paradox. People assume my network. Yeah, come on in.
I'm going to bring my chair.
No, here is the chair.
I thought you needed this.
No, that's okay. There's a wire there here. So it's a very important lesson that most people forget, that what you want to sell is not what you've done, but what they want you to do. And I'll tell you a story. You guys are still eating, so I'll tell you a story. I have a client who left Oracle about a year ago, more than a year ago now. He was a senior director at Oracle and done a lot of good work. And he struggled throughout the year just to get the traction in product management as a director, senior director. And he had like 5 or 6 interviews, and each one of them, either they said you're overqualified, you don't have the right skills. And he said, Dilip, I want to give up, and he's only 45 years old, right? So he came to me about 3 months ago now, right? So I said, we're not going to pursue you as a director or a senior director. We're going to go 2-3 levels up and see what happens, right? Because he had done enough innovative work in technology development that I thought we could sell him as a CTO, which is 2 or 3 levels above director, right? So we spent a month packaging him as a CTO. There was an opening for a CTO role at an engineering company which also does construction work, engineering work, all of that. There was an opening for a CTO. It's a Canadian company. It's a $3 billion company. So when they posted the CTO role, we researched the company. We wrote a great cover letter why the skills that he brings as a CTO would be ideal for the kind of business they do. We wrote that cover letter. And they had received 955 applicants for the CTO role, and he was one of the 5 selected to interview. Right? And if you're interested, I can send you that letter and 1 page of his resume. Now, it's not the same name, I sanitized it. And the reason it was successful is we stopped repeating the narrative that he was so used to. I'm a product manager that sells Oracle database products, that does in cloud, this, that. No. I know how to innovate in an engineering company to develop solutions that field engineers can use with advanced technology, AI, ML, that kind of stuff. And it's all in the letter that we wrote. It took us a month to package this guy. And he was so surprised that, out of the 950 some people who applied, many were actual CTOs. I'm not kidding you. But he was one of the 5 selected. For the first round, I don't know, they are in an industry where they might say you don't bring the engineering construction experience. But he has gone through, I think, 2 rounds so far. And he has done well. And we spent 3 rounds coaching him how to say the right thing. And now he gained his confidence back. So I said, now, because at the end of the year when no, he was really down on himself. He said, Dilip, nothing is working. I said, why don't you take a new approach? I'll send you that letter in the first page of his resume and see how different it makes, how much difference it makes when you completely change your narrative. Okay. So, the bottom line is, develop your narrative first and then do networking. If you do the other way around, it's not going to work. Read that article I wrote about the networking paradox. It's on LinkedIn. It's one of my more recent blogs. Okay, so why don't we introduce ourselves?
My name is Ram Das.
Okay.
And I'm a potential patent writer.
Okay.
And trying to learn how to sell my patent.
Patent. You have patent. Okay.
I'm going to file patent with the USPTO, patent office.
Okay.
And I'm here to figure it out how I'm going to sell my patent to companies or government.
Okay. So I want to go around because our time is limited, and I want to capture and say 2 things you want to learn, everybody, and I will then pick the ones that are common to all of you and tell you what I would do. And then if you have time left, we can get specific.
I want to project myself as a critical and logical thinker.
Okay, so your name is not on my list here.
Gyan Das.
Gyan Das. Okay.
Critical, logical, and optimizer.
I'm sorry, critical what?
Critical thinker, critical and logical thinker, and optimizer as well.
Oh, I see. Okay. So you're not an illogical thinker. Good to know that. All right.
I'm Sravanti.
Yeah.
I currently work as a product manager in a biotech company. But my two takeaways for today is, say, if I'm going to India in 6 months for my own startup, how do I leverage network here and how do I build connections so I can connect to US team?
Connect what?
Connect to the US team, or
So you're not currently connected to the US team?
I am kind of, but not in a startup environment.
Oh, I see. The start. Okay, got it. Okay, got it. And we talked, but for others who were not there.
So I am trying to transition from a hands-on engineering role to a more product management or like a business role, more customer focused. So that's kind of my goal.
Okay, and we just finished addressing his needs. Does that make sense to you? What?
I understand. There are challenges because, as we said a little before, is really speaking, my industry is more focused into EDA, which is really only 3 companies.
No, but the problem is the chip industry is kind of on the downs right
Yes,
now,
yes.
right? And so is EDA. So you need to kind of change the vertical,
Right.
and your focus should be, I know how to talk to the customers.
Right.
Okay.
Sorry, hi, I'm Ashwin Rao. I am a CTO and a co-founder in a retail tech company. We're based in Australia, Melbourne, although I moved to Australia from the Bay Area. And I think what we're now trying to do is we're trying to move from the product development phase to a sales growth and trying to increase our revenues and cash flows. So we're trying to grow, and we
In the US.
in the US. We have presence in Australia. We're also having some operations in India as well.
And what are you selling?
So it's a retail tech. We use machine learning to optimize some key elements of a retailer's merchandising processes. And so with that, they improve their sales on e-commerce operations. They're able to sell better because of what we do.
Okay, and that would include, for example, groceries as well?
Actually, we're focusing on the fashion retail now.
Fashion retail.
Because of the size of the team. Because in the ML side,
Yeah.
we can scale. In fact, a lot of people in Australia have talked to hardware folks. We've done some prototype furniture as well. But we are limiting it to fashion just because of the size of the team.
So fashion also high fashion or just commodity
Actually,
fashion?
Fast fashion, high volume. So that's the niche
Oh,
that
fast.
we
So
started.
it's not high-end fashion. It's not
Not
hard.
high-end fashion, but anybody from fashion can leverage what we do.
Yeah.
But I think the sweet spot are people who have large number of SKUs that they turn
Yeah,
over
correct.
monthly.
It's not haute couture as they call
But I
it.
think in the long-term roadmap, we want to democratize it so that even the small retailers can leverage it.
Yeah, okay, I got it. So your focus is to know what to do to grow your revenue
That's good.
in new markets.
In new markets.
In new markets,
Yeah.
especially US market.
US market.
Okay, we got that. And you are Caesar, right?
No.
Ashwin. I'm
sorry.
Ashwin Rao.
Okay, and you?
My name is Sridhar Katta. I am running a company called TRUVS, Trous.com. We are a
TRU.
VS,
Okay,
TRUVS.
okay.
.com. So we are a modern consulting company. We specialize, you think of us as PwC, but small scale. So we specialize in something called enterprise modernization.
Okay.
What I have done in my company is to combine technology with business process mainly. So thereby helping businesses to do better and cheaper and all that. So that's why I call it a consulting company, but we do work with a lot of solutions. My challenge is we had a really good growth till last year, but my growth is all kind of evaporating slowly as I see. I don't know what to do. So I'm in a stage of my life where I just don't, it's not just the business help. Maybe life coaching is required. So I saw your profile and I thought you have a lot of wisdom and you could help me.
Okay. I don't know about the wisdom part, but I think I have some ideas that may work for you.
Awesome.
Okay, so Sridhar Katta, right?
Correct.
And so how big is your operation headcount-wise?
Headcount, I have around 25 people right now. I had around 70 in September, but now it is 2025.
And these are customer-facing, so they can go sell to a client,
These
engage.
are my consultants. Yeah.
And they can also engage.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so I'll give you some ideas. All right, so let me see if I can see a theme here. Here is what I think. Selling patents or selling IP ideas, growing your business or networking is in a way you're selling yourself, but that's a special case, so I will address that a little bit more specifically. And I think there is a common theme here between the needs of how this can work. So I think what I found in my own personal experience trying to penetrate new areas, new verticals, because I have had 5 careers in 5 different verticals. And the reason I was able to do that, this started, I was 50 years old at the time when I was first laid off as head of engineering. That was 30 years ago. And 30 years ago, there were no career coaches, right? And people didn't understand the difference between being laid off and being fired. So every place I went to, my network, I said, I've been laid off. And their immediate question, why did they fire you? Why did they fire you? I said, no. So what's the difference?
Correct.
So that's the mindset which I had to kind of penetrate, right, at that time. So what I learned from that in a very kind of a difficult way, that's the word, is try to find the pain point of the target that would be your typical target. And happened biotech, I came from high tech, and I'll give you that specific example. There's a company here in the Bay Area called Becton Dickinson. Have you heard of that? Becton Dickinson. Okay. In 1989, AIDS was a big deal. Detection of AIDS, progression of AIDS, treatment of AIDS. But nobody had a device that could detect AIDS and tell what level it's kind of progressing. Becton Dickinson had an idea based on their device called FACScan. That's what their product that they patent on and so forth. So their president was speaking at an event like this. And he said, we're going to be the first one in the market to bring AIDS detection device that's desktop. And we expect to have that fully production in the market by 1995, 6 years later, right? And people clapped and they said, wow, if you can do that. So he was finishing his talk, I caught him and said, I just heard you say 6 years and people are excited. What if I showed you how to do that in 3 years, right? I was not a biotech guy, but I knew I could do it because I had done in high tech, right? So he said, how can you do that? I said, well, then he started telling me about, there is a FDA approval and this and that and clinical trials. I said, have you thought of doing some things concurrently as an exception because AIDS was rampant at the time? So you might get some concessions from FDA, right? And this is, I was just brainstorming with him. And he liked what I said. He said, can you come tomorrow to my office and present to my executive staff how you're going to do this? So I spent the entire night studying what they do and what I could do to get their FACScan out in 3 years. So I spent an hour talking to them after spending a night thinking, and they said, you're hired as a consultant. And in 3 years, we got it out, right? So that was my first stint in what I call reinvention. And what did I learn from that? And it applies to any reinvention that anybody does. And it applies to what you're trying to sell, what you're trying to grow, or what you're trying to as a IP product. So what you have to find is their pain point and articulate in a language that they understand, not you understand, right? And so part of the thing that happens is when people say to you, tell me about yourself, right? The tendency is to focus on what you have done, not what you want to do, right? And when you focus on what you want to do, you have to start with the pain point that they have. I call it CPOP, customer point of pain, right? And so you have to target enough niche of a customer so that you have a good handle on how to articulate that pain. And you have to speak in a way that they say, and this guy never asked me, the president never asked me, do you even understand how biotech works, right? And I'll tell you another story that happened in 2000. Now this was my third layoff. In 2000 I was laid off again. I've been laid off 3 times. So everybody was laying off in 2000, you know, the Silicon Valley of employees, right? So I said, where is the action right now? The action was people in the outplacement business. People who are coming out of Hewlett Packard and Sun and Cisco and others by the thousands are put through these companies that show them how to write your resumes, how to do interviews, how to network, how to get a job, right? They're called outplacement services. So I called the head of outplacement at a company called Lee Hecht Harrison, that's right in San Jose. And I called the head of client services, and I said, I didn't say, I want to work with you, I'm not a career coach, I need a job. That's not how I started. I started saying by asking him, whom do you have in your staff, coaching staff, that has been an engineer, that has changed career twice, and knows how to reinvent themselves? How many coaches do you have in that cadre? And there was a dead silence for about 10 seconds. And her next question was, are you available? This is a true story.
Wow.
Right? Because I was speaking her language. She immediately said, gosh, you know, this is amazing. You can reinvent. We want him. She didn't ask me, are you a certified coach? I wasn't. Have you coached before? I wasn't. Any of that. So the point I want to make here again and again is, we focus so much on our past and translate that past to get us to the next step that we forget what the CPOP is, customer point of pain. And if you can speak that language, it's amazing how easy it becomes.
Fair enough. And it's a difficult thing to do because and that's what I admire, you know, in trying to hopefully improve myself. I spent 18 years with Sun Microsystems and Oracle. In fact, 2000, I was actually laid off at Sun, but my manager was furious. My name was not supposed to be on. So 3 months later, he calls me and says, "I'm hiring you back."
Oh, wow.
And so that's something that happened there. But my concern is that, you know, we faced that challenge in our startup journey. I moved to Australia for personal reasons. I went for a holiday from here, loved it, and decided that's the place I want to be. But I think when we started building the product out, we addressed the pain point, which we believed was there, was vetted and validated. But after we built it, to some extent, we recognized it was a pain point that was shared at the mid-management level, right? But the buying decision was being taken by senior management, and that was a challenge for us because now we had all those mid-managers saying, we want the product, but the senior manager is saying maybe this is not the right time for it, and kind of so it slowed our growth pattern down. It slowed our thing. So for me, I think we made a mistake in not necessarily relating that pain point to who the decision maker is. You know, the mapping of where are we talking the right language? I think we made that mistake.
The language, see, here's the thing, I'm glad you brought that up. So here's the thing, if your springboard is the middle management, right? So you need to figure out how to champion those and how to leverage that champion status that you have into a language that executives understand. Because here's the thing, the way the middle management speaks and communicates is very different from how C-levels communicate, right? So if they take the message that they got from you to their management, they're still speaking the language that's at the middle level, right? So you need to learn how to convert that lexicon into a C-level lexicon in terms that they understand. You know, the biggest problem I find, especially in research and development, right? The research folks talk about electrons and holes and mobility, right? But the people on the product side talk about speed of response, latency. It's a different language. It's a different lexicon, right? So what is the harder of the transitions people make is not so much how you understand the pain, but how you articulate that in the narrative that they understand.
Very true.
Like I gave you two examples, right? With Becton Dickinson, and I was there for 3 years as a consultant. With Lee Hecht Harrison, I was there for 4 years, and I wrote 4 books out of that experience.
Wow. I would love, I'm going to make those.
Right? So the point I came up with during that Lee Hecht Harrison coaching stint, I came up with a whole different approach of how to reinvent yourself by articulating your genius. And it's a storytelling approach. And most people don't know how to do that on a resume.
No, I would love to get that if I'm ever in the job next. But seriously, that's a skill that I really think I would like to leverage.
It's the story that you bring. I'm telling you a story right now. Right? A story has to be that compelling. They have to read it and say, how did he do that? Now, and I'll tell you another example. As a part of that coaching stint in 2001 it was, everybody was laying off, including Apple. A client of mine at Lee Hecht Harrison had an idea for one of the Apple's products. He said, this product is unserviceable. You cannot open it, you cannot play with it, broken, it's throw it away, right? But he said, I can figure out how to package it so it can be serviceable. And I said, come show it to me. And he came and showed it to me. I said, wow, that's amazing, you can do that. So we wrote a letter to Steve Jobs. And that letter is in my book, so I'm not making it up. We wrote a letter to Steve Jobs, 3/4 of a page, that said, Mr. Jobs, I think it was called G4 at the time, the computer they had, that is unserviceable, but I wrote it for the client, and here is the idea how you can make it serviceable and increase its lifespan, right? And if this interests you, please call me. The day after we sent it FedEx to Steve Jobs. Day after we sent the letter, his secretary called my client